Hi, welcome back to the workshop for episode 43 of the ES335 build, and it's an exciting time for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I break up for Christmas tomorrow, happy days, and secondly, by the end of this episode we should have something that will make something resembling guitar-like sounds. Okay, so as we said in the last episode, we're getting very close now to getting some finish on this guitar, but there are still a number of jobs to get done before we can get there. First one is I just need to clean up a little bit of this neck tenon that's extending out into the pickup cavity. We'll have a look at that in a second. We need to fit the bridge and the tailpiece, so they need to be done, and we need to do a complete trial build of this guitar just to make sure that everything fits as it should. So what I'll do is I'll bring you in closer to this front pickup cavity and we'll look at the jobs we've got to do in there. Okay, and you can probably just see here, this neck tenon extends out probably about 1/16 of an inch into the pickup route. It probably wouldn't interfere with the pickup, but I'm going to trim that down just so I'm happy with it. There's also these two little gaps under the edge of the fretboard and they need to be filled, so I'm going to cut some very delicate little rosewood wedges to get glued into there, and all that will do, it will just help support the edges of the fretboard, make everything a little bit more solid and less gaps for grunge and horribleness to accumulate in. Now there's always a point for me in these builds where I'm editing something and I look at it and think, oh, you prune, you forgot to do such and such. And that happened when I was editing the last episode, because what I should have done is drilled the hole between this pickup cavity and this pickup cavity before the neck went in, because that makes it really easy, because you've got a nice straight run through the neck pocket between those two pickups. Now I'm going to have to go in at an angle, and I'm not entirely sure that the angle I can get is going to be shallow enough to go through without causing an issue. But them's the breaks. Sometimes you drop lucky on these things, and if they've got an output jack that's on the rib of the body, you can drill through that way with a very long drill bit. Obviously that's not the case on this build. The other option would be to drill through the pickup cavity and into the cavity in the body and then feed the wires through that way, but I want to do it through this pickup cavity just to keep it all nice and neat. I'm not sure how that's going to work out. I'm going to give it a go that way. If it's not possible, we'll have to go in this way. We'll just have to live with that. But first off, we'll get everything cleaned up in here with a nice sharp chisel. Okay, and I'm just going to start working away at some of this. It's really awkward to film this and do it at the same time, but I'm just going to start by kind of taking off that angle. Okay, and with that tidied up much nicer, now we can turn our attentions to this tiny little lip of mahogany that's sticking above the body there, which is going to interfere with the pickup ring. So I'm going to score this with a scalpel. And then just start taking that out with a chisel. And that's spot on now. So now I can go about the last little job in this area, which is drilling this hole through between the pickups. This could be interesting. Okay, so to do this, I've got a really long drill bit. It's a 300mm long 6mm drill. I'm just going to put it into the battery drill. Now, people who have watched this channel for a while might have seen this trick before, but I think it's a brilliant one and really worth passing on. And all I've got here is a little bit of metal tube. I'm going to pass the drill bit through that, and I'm going to place that on the edge of my pickup route, and all that will do is really protect the route from the drill bit. Now, there is a little word of caution here. Sometimes if the drill bit is a bit bent or it's running eccentrically, it can kind of like beat a little dent into the side of your work. Generally it's not too bad, and if it does, it's something you can usually get out with a hot iron and a wet rag. Hopefully that won't happen, but it will definitely stop the drill bit cutting into the wood. Now, I think just eyeballing this, I'm probably going to be okay, because remember, this pickup route goes quite a bit deeper than this one. So I'm going to try and start as near as the bottom as I can, and then go through from there. Here's hoping. Whew. I say that's worked out pretty well. So that's come out about 3mm from the bottom of that deep section of the pickup route. So that's pretty much spot on. It has, let's put a tiny little dent in the corner of that pickup route. That would get covered by the pickup ring, but I will try and just steam that out before I go too much further. But all in all, I'm really happy with that, because that could have been a problem. My stupidity in not following the correct order of operations could have caused me a bigger headache than it has. So lucky to get away with that one, really. So next up is a bit we really can't get wrong. This needs to be pretty accurately done, and that is to position the bridge. If we get this out of place, you'll never be able to intonate the guitar, so it does need to be positioned relatively accurately. There is quite a lot of adjustment on these, so it doesn't have to be absolutely fractionally perfect, but you do need a good degree of accuracy. Now, my process for doing this, and other people do it differently, is I'm going to position the tailpiece as best as I can. So I'm going to be very accurate in the way I measure and fit this. With that done, I will then fit the 2 E-tuners, and I will put some temporary kind of sacrificial strings on. I've got a set of old strings knocking around that I use for this purpose, and in the absence of a knot, I will then take those strings in position where I want them in regards to the edge of the fretboard. With that done, I can then put the bridge underneath those strings to make sure I've got the right lateral positioning for the bridge. And then it's just a question of making sure that the bridge is at the correct angle, drilling the holes for the studs, and mounting it. It's possibly always a bit of a nervous moment, but I've done this a number of times and it's always worked out fine, so I'm not really particularly worried. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a straight edge And I'm going to line that with the side of the fretboard. Just put a couple of lines in, like that. I've already measured from the nut line my scale length, which is 24 3/4, and that's given me a line there. And on the drawing it's given me a measurement of 31mm from the centre line of the bridge to the front face of the tailpiece, which will put me somewhere there, which all looks spot on from my point of view. With those two positions established, I'm just going to put a pencil line on my centre line to make sure I'm hitting that with the protractor, and then I can square my lines across. And this is the main reason I didn't do all of the finish sanding before we did this work, because I knew I was going to be putting these pencil lines back in. I could have used masking tape to mark on, but you do tend to just put a little line in even through the masking tape that you need to sand out anyway, so I couldn't really see the point in that. So now I'm going to measure this element of the tailpiece, which gives me 73.8, and if we halve that it gives us 36.9mm. So I'm just going to set my dividers up to that measurement. Just put some little marks in. On the top, and that gives us our reference marks for exactly where that tailpiece should sit. So with that established, I'm going to hold that in position. I'm going to take the appropriate size transfer punch, and I'm just going to make a mark. So now I'm going to take this to the drill press, drill out for this one stud, fit the stud. Once I've done that, I can then fit the tailpiece, and then we can repeat the process, mark that with the transfer punch, put the other stud in, and we know we're going to have them in as best a position as we possibly can. Okay, so that's the bridge in position now, and it's actually worked out really well. It all sits nice and evenly along the fretboard, sort of almost makes a noise as well. So I'm going to take, again, the appropriate size transfer punch and just make a mark thus. And then I need to take all of this off again, install this first stud, but we also need to angle this bridge back by about 3 degrees, but I'm going to do that once I've got the first stud in place, because that will give me something to pivot on. So yeah, just get all this off again. Okay, so that's the first stud installed. And I've also marked the line on at 3 degrees back So I'm simply going to put the bridge on, line it up with that line, and I'm just going to use that as a bit of a scribe. I can see that intersects with that line just there, so put a centre mark in, get it to the drill press and drill out for the second stud. Okay, so that's drilled out now. In terms of fitting these studs, all I've done is I've locked the two little collars onto the stud very gently without damaging the plating on them, and then you can use that to screw the stud in with. They do get a little bit tight as you go further in. That should be about right. It's got to come out again anyway, so it's not a massive issue if it's not in far enough at the moment. And then I'll just gently release that top nut a little bit, and that should spin off. Bit of luck, our bridge will fit nicely. Studs could do with going in just a tiny little bit more, but that'll be okay. Okay, so now is as good a time as any to put the tailpiece back on and see if we got this neck in at something like the right angle. Okay, so the bridge is on, tailpiece is on, I've got a couple of strings on. Now the bridge is sat as far down as it will go pretty much now, and the action is way too low. The strings are almost sitting on the frets. There's obviously no nut in at the moment, so that's going to influence things a little bit, but I'm pretty confident that we've got the neck in at a really good angle. And that's going to give us a really nice low playable action. So happy days. The next thing we need to do is fill in these little gaps underneath the fretboard, trial fit the pickups, get them into their kind of correct positions, drill the holes for the pickup rings, get all that kind of stuff done, check that all these holes in the body are the right size for the controls that are going to go into them, and then we'll be pretty much there. However, we've run out of time for this one, so we're going to be doing all that in the next episode while I wait for the paint order to arrive. So until then, as always, like if you've liked, subscribe if you haven't already done so. It really does make a difference to the channel, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.